Welcome back everyone. So today I'm going to be taking a look at the hard mode Crota's end hand cannon, the Word of Crota. And just in case you're wondering how you get this weapon, you have a chance of getting it from defeating Crota himself. Now right off the bat, I'm just going to say that this weapon isn't that great. Really the only unique thing about this weapon is the fact that it's a void hand cannon, and the only other void primary in the game besides Atheon's epilogue from the Vault of Glass. With that said, let's take a closer look at the perks. So in the first column we have our three different sights. The first one is Steady Hand, so let's just take a closer look at that. As you can see, it's just a red dot surrounded by green brackets on either side of it. Let's take a closer look at the second sight, which is Fast Draw. This one decreases stability whilst increasing reload speed, and really the only difference between this one and the first one is the green brackets are now red, and on the front of the gun is a tiny iron sight, which is pointless because you don't use the iron sight on this gun anyway, you use the red dots on this gun to aim, so that's kind of pointless. And moving on to the third sight, which is Sure Shot. This one further decreases stability whilst increasing reload speed, and again it's pretty much the same. The only thing that has changed is the iron sight, which is barely noticeable anyway, so there's really no difference between these sights. And then the changes in the stats are minuscule, so really it's just down to personal preference. But as I said, they're all the same, so there's not really much to compare. If you actually just take a look at the preview of the weapon here, you can see the sights change as I cycle through them. So yeah, as you can see, just there's barely any difference. So moving on to the first special perk of this weapon, we have Zen Moment. Causing damage with this weapon increases its stability. Now, there's not really much to say about this perk. I mean, more stability is always better in any situation, whether it be PvE or PvP. But this weapon already has a pretty high stability, so Zen Moment doesn't really add much more. Then moving on to the next column of perks, we have Speed Reload, reload this weapon quickly, Hammer Forged, improved range and accuracy, and Explosive Rounds. Now I prefer to use Hammer Forged for the improved range and accuracy, because whilst the faster reload speeds are nice, I feel like the difference in speed isn't big enough to make it useful, and make me want to use it over something like Hammer Forged or Explosive Rounds. As you can see here in this side-by-side comparison, the difference in reload speed just really isn't that much. As for explosive rounds on this weapon, I feel like this might be more of a personal preference thing. The thing with this weapon is that it seems to have a slightly lower impact than some other hand cannons, and with explosive rounds it splits the damage, so it might not be a great idea to pick this perk, although the stagger could be kind of useful in the Crucible. The other unique perk of this gun is Phantom Gift. Rapidly landing 3 precision hits returns 1 round to the magazine, and this is similar to the Black Hammer's White Nail perk, except the only difference is instead of returning a full mag, it only returns 1 bullet. So with 12 rounds in a magazine, that means you can gain up to 5 additional shots, which will allow you to fire 17 shots in a row without reloading. Now frankly, the Phantom Gift perk is pretty weak, and trying to get those 3 shots feels like more of a challenge. Especially when you're in the heat of combat, you're sort of forced to step back and time your shots if you want to get those 3 hits, just for that 1 extra bullet, and really it's just not worth it to me, and it's even less useful in the Crucible. Maybe if it returned 2 or 3 more bullets, it would be a lot more useful, but right now it's just not worth it and a waste of a perk. Finally, we have the Hive Disruptor perk, which is a perk that all Crota's End weapons come with, and this increases damage to Hive mages. So then, how does the Word of Crota compare to other legendary hand cannons in terms of stats? So let's see. Compared to the Vault of Glass hand cannon Fatebringer, it has slightly better stats in most areas except for impact. Fatebringer has more impact than the Word of Crota, which means that it does more damage, despite the Word of Crota maxing out at 331 attack, whereas Fatebringer maxes out at 300 attack. Fatebringer's special perks are Firefly, which causes enemies to explode with precision kills, and Outlaw. Precision kills with this weapon dramatically increase the reload speed. So would I use Fatebringer over the Word of Crota? Absolutely. I also have a couple of other hand cannons here. So compared to the Dead Orbit hand cannon Venation 3, it has a higher rate of fire, less impact, a lot more range, the tiniest bit more stability, and a faster reload speed. Now actually, if we just take off the Hammer Forged perk for a second, you'll see that it has pretty much the same range as most other hand cannons. So really, the Hammer Forged perk makes a massive difference in range. Now compared to the New Monarchy hand cannon Red Hand, again it has a higher rate of fire, less impact, much more range, less stability, and a faster reload speed. However, I still prefer my new Monarchy hand cannon over the Word of Crota because of the higher impact. I also managed to bag myself a pretty good red hand. The special perks are one random bullet in the magazine causes considerable bonus damage, and kills with this weapon grant bonus ammo directly to the magazine. I actually talk about this weapon a bit more in my class setup video, so if you want to see that, I'll put a link in the description if you want to check out what loadouts I use for both PvE and PvP. Now let's just quickly see how the Word of Crota compares to some exotic hand cannons. So compared to the last Word, it has the same rate of fire and same impact, however much more range, less stability and a slower reload speed, but that's to be expected since the last Word is more of a hip-fire weapon, so it needs all the stability it can get. Now compared to possibly the best PvP weapon in the game, Hawk Moon, it has a slightly higher rate of fire, less impact, slightly more range, slightly more stability, and a slower reload speed. So really the Word of Crota is pretty average for a hand cannon. The only thing that's holding it back in my opinion is the lower impact and the useless perks. I seriously hope that Bungie bring a buff to this weapon, even if they just slightly increase the impact so it's the same as every other hand cannon, and make the perks more useful, then it'll be a much more viable hand cannon. Right now really the only main use for this weapon I can see would be for Nightfalls where Voidburn is active. Other than that, it's not really that great of a weapon. However, I do still think it's a fun weapon to use. I tend to use it a lot in PvE, just because it's just fun to use. But it's so unfortunate that the perks and the stats aren't as good as other hand cannons. So that is a look at the Word of Crota. Let me know what you think of this hand cannon down in the comments below. Thank you for watching everyone, positive ratings are always appreciated, and I will talk to you next time.